Hello, everyone. Good afternoon, and welcome back to the latest edition of the EFL Betting Show. I'm delighted to be here once again. My name is Matt Hill, and I am joined by my co-colleague and the inform Gab Sutton, who is enjoying a very profitable early season, it should be said. It was a little bit of a tougher week for us last week, Gab. Hit the bar with a few selections, but you're still showing a very healthy profit for the campaign. Myself, I'm still scrambling to try and get into profit after a bad couple of opening weeks, but yeah, I'm hitting the winners a little bit with a little bit more regularity now. So I'm feeling optimistic going into this week. Gab, before we dive into today's show, how have you been? How's your week been?
Yeah, great, thank you. Off to Northampton this weekend. They've got Exeter City, so two teams that I'm a little bit cautious about this season. I think could be in for a struggle. So really curious to see if any of them can, either of them can show some signs of life. Obviously, Exeter have got a couple of wins on the board, so looking forward to that one. And also looking forward to spending time in your lovely company to talk through some EFL action.
Thank you. I wish my missus felt the same way about spending time in my company. No, but it is great to be back. And for anyone that's watching the EFL Betting Show for the first time, let me first start by saying that betting needs to be fun. Please do gamble responsibly if you are having a flutter this weekend. And we will always encourage responsible gambling on this show. But we are in the process of trying to point you in the direction of a few winning selections going into this footballing weekend. What we will do here on the EFL Betting Show, myself and Gab, will run through the Championship, League One and League Two. We'll make a betting selection each from each of the three divisions, and then we'll run through them at the end. And the way we do with our staking plan, we have a 1 point single on each of our selections and a half a point treble. So if we do hit the full house, as Gab did a couple of weeks ago, everybody's laughing. And, we're kind of looking at one winner will save face, two will put us into profit, and three will make it a very good week indeed. So that's the aim. We're always aiming for 3 out of 3 on this show. I've not had it yet this season. So maybe today is the day. Gab, we will start in the Championship, I think. Both got quite strong selections here, I would think, at similar prices. I notice you've gone very close to home here as a Birmingham fan yourself, and it's been a great start to the season, a dramatic win last weekend. And yeah, back on home ground here. Looks a very winnable game against Oxford, who are a side who've done well since they've come up to the Championship. They've been competitive, obviously stayed up comfortably last season, but this looks a tough assignment for them. You're backing Birmingham to win, but not just to win. You're also throwing in the clean sheet in there as well. Tell us why.
Yeah, I think because we're so hotly fancied by the bookies, it's very difficult to get any value with us via the outright win market. So I've kind of gone with the to nil option, and there's a few reasons I've gone for that angle. But if I'm going to make a case for Birmingham City, which is pretty self-explanatory, which I'm not used to saying that, Matt. I'm used to us not being as good, but
I think you are from last season, to be fair.
I know, yeah, exactly. But I think we've obviously carried a lot of confidence from last season forward with us, as I think a lot of us expected. And we've also added really well under ambitious owners. And I think already what you're seeing is partnerships across the park. So we've brought in Phil Newman, who's a real athlete and really complements Christoph Clara. And they look two dominant centre halves. We've got Peiki Nawata, who forged a real partnership last season, of course, and they've just carried that on, especially in the performance against Ipswich on opening night. And you've got Kyogo Furuhashi and Jay Stansfield, who again complement one another really nicely, and both have a real eye for goal as well. And I think that we've deserved the 4 points from the first two games that we've got, even if maybe in a different order. We probably deserve to beat Ipswich and maybe draw at Blackburn. But I think on the whole, it's been a really positive start, and I think something special is building there. From Oxford's point of view, they've begun with back-to-back defeats. They're not quite as tight as you'd sometimes expect a Gary Rowett side to be. They've got a couple of issues in midfield where Cameron Brannigan, who's their stalwart, has been playing through an injury, and possibly a similar story with Will Vaulks as well. They're a little bit low on numbers and quality in certain areas, and I think Gary Rowett would like another 3 or 4 players between now and the end of the window. Whether he'll get that, we don't quite know. They're definitely short in sort of attacking midfield and wide areas as well. And so it's difficult to back them on the early season performances that we've seen from them, along with the fact that while they can threaten from Tyler Goodrum's set pieces and Will Volks's long throws, they're not very creative in open play. That was probably a trend from them in the second half of last season, and that's kind of continued. So I do back Gary Rowett because I think he's a very reliable Championship manager, and I think he eventually will find solutions. And maybe it might be that it's a slightly improved Oxford performance, but we might still beat them 1-0. I think there's a world where that happens as well. But I don't think that Oxford are creating enough to think that they'll dislodge us. And I think we've got enough to get a goal at the other end.
Okay, yeah, I mean, it's like you say, it's quite an easy case to make because Birmingham's ever so strong for the last sort of season and a bit. Very hard to pick holes in them, and Oxford obviously making that tough start. Just on the wider picture, Gab, Birmingham's title prospects I wanted to ask you about, because it felt like all of the pre-season discourse was dominated by Ipswich and Southampton largely. Not an awful lot of sort of confidence around other teams being able to compete with those two. I think it's fair to say both have been a little bit sluggish in their opening outings, maybe not the very high standards expected of them at all of the time. Do you think that this Birmingham squad does have what it takes to compete at the very top end of this division?
Yes, I think so. I think that we're on a really exciting journey at the moment. It still feels that, as much as you're right in your comment earlier, that we are kind of used to having a good side from a great side from last season. It still feels unusual to almost find myself talking about Birmingham City in these terms, because we're used to not expecting very much. So that's kind of, it's a really enjoyable era for the fan base and a great time to be associated with the football club. And so, I think when you combine the momentum behind the club with the quality of management of Chris Davies, who I think can go a long, long way, and also the ambition behind the recruitment, and it wouldn't surprise me if there's a bit more between now and the end of the window. I really do think it's exciting time. So I think we'll finish in the top two.
Bullish. I like it. It's as someone else who's a long-suffering fan of a club with not much success, you do have to enjoy it when things are going good. And long may that continue for you and your fellow Blues, Gab. Okay, so we'll move on to my selection in the Championship then. As I say, we're operating at similar kind of prices today. And I'm focusing on the Hull versus Blackburn game here. I'm going to go for Casey Palmer over 1.5 shots in this game at 11-10. Not shots on target, shots. This is a standout price. It's available with BetMGM and all their kind of similar skins, so Unibet, LiveScoreBet, etc. If you get on with any of those. And the shot markets can at times be challenging for some seasoned punters to get their money down on. But I'm hoping some can, because I really do think this is a massive price. For context, this is as short as 1-5 with some of the bookmakers. But there's a lot of reasons why I like this bet, and it's not just the fact that it looks a wrong price. Hull, I think probably their fans were frustrated in pre-season that so many chose to kind of write them off for a season of struggle. But you have to be honest and say the bare evidence from the outside didn't really give you much faith that they were going to be able to go much higher. There was a lot of uncertainty. Obviously, another new manager. The hires from Akun have not been sort of foolproof, really, previously. And it looked another big risk. There was a lot of question marks over the recruitment, which I think has, probably improved as the summer's gone on. And I think people were very valid to have doubts about them. But Hull fans were very passionate from what I saw in that their team would play better than what was being expected of them. And so far, you have to say that they're being proved right. Hull have made a good start. Solid 0-0 draw at Coventry. Obviously, dramatic 3-2 win over Oxford last time out as well. I think bigger tests obviously lie ahead. I'm not willing to sort of go out there and say Hull might challenge for the playoffs yet. But I think that there's clearly a good feeling around the club. And I think sometimes when you get written off so widely, there can be a bit of a siege mentality, actually. And it can kind of inspire you to perform better than the sum of your parts. I like the acquisition of Ollie McBurney as well. I think they've been crying out for that kind of forward, someone with a bit of experience who could just provide a foil for the players in behind, because I actually quite like them in these sort of creative attacking midfield and wide areas. I like Joe Gelhardt. I like Palmer. And they have other options in there as well, a couple of injuries as well to come back. So I think if they can find a way of getting these creative players on the ball a little bit more, that is going to be key to them pushing up towards sort of mid-table and, maybe top half. Very early to say. But they're in a good moment right now. They've got a home game coming up against Blackburn, who've not made a good start. Obviously, you've already touched on it. Had a bit of a heartbreaking defeat last week to Birmingham, 1-0 up in the 90th minute, ended up losing 2-1. So that can knock the wind out of your sails a little bit. And I think Ishmael, obviously, he's had mixed results in the Championship. I think the pressure could rise on him quite quickly if they continue this sort of very slow start, because I don't know what the expectations are at Blackburn. It's a hard club to judge under the Venkies, but I don't think they're expected to be at the bottom end fighting relegation, especially when you consider they were in and around the playoffs for a lot of last season. So interesting game, this one for me. I think the momentum is with Hull. And yeah, just a little bit more on Palmer and why I think this is a particularly good bet. I've already kind of touched on it really, but I think with McBurney in the side, if you look at the heat map last time out against Oxford, it was noticeable to me that Palmer is getting a lot further forward than he has at previous occasions. And I think in that 10 position is where we've seen the best of Casey Palmer throughout his career at Coventry. Obviously, he had a tough time of things when he kind of fell out at Coventry and a couple of failed loans. He's come to Hull last season. I think their fan base were a bit split on him. But it looks to me like he's now ready to kick on and get back to his best. And I think when he is at his best, he's one of the best in his position in the Championship. His shot numbers, the last 2 games, have been 3 shots and 2 shots. So I don't see any reason why against Blackburn he's going to have a drop off there. The only caveat I would give is that Palmer is probably someone who would look for the pass rather than having a pot shot himself. But given the way that they've played the last couple of games, given the trajectory of Hull and Blackburn and the momentum behind the two sides, I really do quite like this odds against quote with live score bet. It's also available, as I say, with Unibet and BetMGM.
Well, I like that you're talking about heat maps there. A real level of detail we've got here on the odds now.
No expenses spared. Yeah. You see what I'm doing at 1 a.m.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
I think the big thing with Hull, Matt, is they've so far retained Charlie Hughes and Ivor Panda, and I think they can be 2 of the better players in the Championship in their respective positions, centre-back and goalkeeper. So I think Hull are actually reasonably strong in the defensive areas, both in terms of personnel and the organisational qualities of Sergej Yakirovic, who did some good work in terms of solidifying things at Kayserispor last season in Turkey. I maybe question Hull in terms of what they've got further forward and whether Ollie McBurney is going to continue this form. But yes,
I like Joe Gelhardt, Gab. I don't know if you've got any thoughts on him.
Yeah, I think he's been a difficult player to sort of place sometimes, in that I don't always see him as an out-and-out centre forward. You don't always see him as a number 10. He's kind of like a sort of a second striker though, but he started well, hasn't he? So maybe a bit of signs with Gail Hart. Maybe he can come into form perhaps.
Yeah, well, time will tell. Like I kind of say, it's very early to try and be making these assumptions of teams at the moment. But I do kind of want to see Hull do well, I think, because I've been there as a fan when you think your club is better positioned than you're getting credit for, and it does rile people up, doesn't it? And I'm sure you would take a bit of stick yourself if they did go on and have a good season, because you've got to do these. Yeah. You've got to put your neck on the line with these predictions, and no one's ever going to be happy to be predicted relegated, but you certainly weren't the only one. So we'll see if Hull can outrun those odds this season. But for me, it would be Casey Palmer this weekend, over 1.5 shots in the game, 11-10 with live score bet. Well, we'll move on into League One then, Gab. And I didn't know. I'll be honest, we're going to come on to my selection. I was kind of struggling for a bet in League One a little bit this week. There wasn't anything that jumped off the page to me. But before we come to me, you've gone with something, an odds-on pork. Looks fairly rock solid. I definitely get the logic behind it before we've even spoke about it. But you're going to back Cardiff on the double chance against Luton. This is a 12:30 kickoff. Obviously, 2 of the relegated sides from last season in the Championship. I think the feelings going into the season when Luton were going to be a lot stronger than Cardiff. I'm not sure if performances have actually clarified that just yet.
Yeah, and I think it's always difficult, isn't it, Matt, when you're around 4 games in, how much do you weight on what you thought teams would, the levels you thought teams would be at before the season, and what do you put on the first few games? Because sometimes you can be too easily won over by what's happened, or too easily sort of moved by what's happened either way in the first 4 games. And maybe don't have enough of an eye on the macro picture, but sometimes you don't pay teams enough respect, or you can kind of not move enough if teams are showing certain signs, be them positive or negative. But I think from my point of view, I've been really impressed with Cardiff in the first few games. I think they look like a really good footballing side under Brian Barry Murphy, a coach who I rate very highly. And maybe I'm actually a little bit surprised at how quickly he's been able to get his ideas across. And from that point of view, I don't know that I see them losing at Luton this weekend. And I think that Luton, of course, they beat Wimbledon 1-0 on opening night, didn't they? Weren't hugely convincing that evening. They've also lost 2-1 at Bradford last weekend in a game where they could have lost by more. And so for me to kind of go in, or I
Even
think
in the win against Peterborough, Gab, I mean, you've got massive reservations over Peterborough this season as well, based on what you've seen. So it's hard to be confident, isn't it?
Yeah, exactly. And I think I'm a bit of a double chance. I won for double chances anyway, Matt. I like the sort of the security and the leeway that gives you. So yeah, so I'm going to go with Cardiff.
Okay, well, to be honest, you won't get too many complaints from me because I quite like Cardiff, and to be honest, after what I saw from them against Peterborough, I actually took a little bit of them at 10-1 for the league. I can't say I'm mega confident. I just thought they were a big price, and I have my reservations over the other market leaders here. Obviously, Luton we've just discussed. Plymouth were well fancied before the start of the season. Have had a rotten start. It does feel like a league where it might be an opportunity for somebody to kind of, outrun their odds there, and we'll see. This would be a good marker for them if they can go to Luton and get a result. And yeah, I like Brian Barry Murphy as a coach as well. I echo what you just said there. I think he's been linked with so many jobs, hasn't he? And he's waited for the right time to go back in, I think. And he's at a club where he could definitely grow with them, I think, as well. So look forward to seeing how that game pans out. As I said, League One for me, it was a tough one. Tough one to dig one out here, but I have ended up going with Huddersfield to beat Stevenage, taking on the only side with a 100% record in the league. That cannot be the best logic that's ever been applied to betting. However, I actually don't know if, like, Huddersfield for me are probably one of the best teams in this division, man for man. They had a disappointing defeat at Blackpool last time out, 3-2. Blackpool, all the goals in the first half. Blackpool went down to 10 men just before half time. You're probably on the face of it expecting Huddersfield to go and win that. But this is a little bit cliche. Playing against a low block, playing against 10 men can be very, very tough sometimes. It can actually make things harder for yourself. And the way that game was going in the first half was that it was very stretched, very end-to-end. Blackpool's goals had a couple of elements of fortune about them, both of Niall Ennis's. One fell to him very kindly, and one of them was a complete scuff that kind of rolled into the bottom corner and bamboozled the Huddersfield keeper. So I kind of had faith if the game continued in that pattern that Huddersfield would have got something out of the game anyway. But when it went to 10 men, it maybe did Blackpool a little bit of a favour. Barely anything happened in the second half. They just sat in a low block and Huddersfield couldn't break them down. And it was just one of those days. But they bounced back against Doncaster. I think Doncaster are a good side based on everything I've seen so far this season. I think they'll do more than all right at League One level this season. And Huddersfield managed to get the better of them. It was a tight game, but 1-2-0. All of their 3 wins have been accompanied by a clean sheet thus far. And in terms of Stevenage, it's not that I'm anti-Stevenage. I've been very impressed with the way Alex Revell's gone about it, actually, because that was probably viewed as a bit of an unambitious appointment at the time, and he's done fantastically well across last season and this season. However, I've just got a little bit of a reservation about the teams that they've beaten thus far. If you actually look at the results, they've beaten Port Vale, they've beaten Northampton, and the other one escapes me at the minute, but all sort of teams I'm expecting.
Blackpool.
So I'm not sure that the wins have got the collateral of a team 12 points out of 12, perfect start. Jamie Reid scored 2 very late goals in midweek as well to turn that game on its head as well. The 1-0 down in the 89th minute. You don't want to discredit them. Obviously, going 4 wins out of 4 is fantastic. But if we take the basis that Stevenage may be a little bit flattered by the fixtures that they've had, and that Huddersfield, Blackpool game aside, which had extenuating circumstances, have won all of their games to 0, then maybe I just look at the quality of these two squads and actually think, well, if Huddersfield are in reasonably good nick and Stevenage are a little bit flattered by their opposition thus far, then getting odds against about Huddersfield to beat them might feel like a steal. It might be one of those that come 5 o'clock. If Huddersfield have won this 2-0 with an element of comfort, it's going to look a massive price. I'm well aware of the dangers of opposing a team in form and confident like Stevenage, but that's kind of where I'm at. And as I say, this will be my least confident selection of the 3 this week, but I have the odds against have suckered me in. If Huddersfield were odds on, I'd probably have stayed clear.
Interesting. You've sold me slightly on that, Matt.
That's a result, because off air, Gab told me he didn't like this pick. So, I mean, I've turned him a little bit.
You're like, I don't know, Alan Sugar at the start of his career, selling.
Snake oil salesman.
Exactly. Yeah, I think, I suppose if you look at it when, let's say at the start of the season, if this was an opening day fixture, we'd be looking at Huddersfield, I think, being priced around 1 to 2 possibly.
Maybe. Yeah, shorter, yeah.
Yeah. And so I think that the fact that, do we read too much into the fact that Stevenage have won their first 4 games, beating Blackpool, Rotherham, Northampton and Port Vale, all sides who could conceivably be in the bottom 8? It's an interesting question. I don't know whether I would take this on myself, because I do like Stevenage defensively. I think they've got some really good foundations there, and I think the pairing of Charlie Good and Carl Piergiani is going to be difficult to dislodge. But I kind of see where you're going at it, because Huddersfield have looked like a good attacking side that can create lots of chances.
On a 1-to-1 basis for these games, Gab, I mean, Port Vale, Stevenage, I would just narrowly give the edge to Stevenage there. This is not talking about how the results panned out, but like going into the game, I would have maybe given to Stevenage a narrow edge there, but not a lot. Rotherham are in a bit of a mess. I don't want to say crisis, but yeah, borderline. So, anyone would probably fancy the chances there. And Northampton, I think, are the bookmakers' favourites to finish bottom of the league. So that, to me, sort of not question marks over the 3 wins, because they won them and they did the job.
4.
But, yeah, sorry, those 3 in particular, sorry. But it just makes me act with a little bit of trepidation, and I feel like they've maybe had a slightly kind run of fixtures, and this is not a kind fixture, is it? I mean, I have Huddersfield in my top 6. I wouldn't be all that surprised if they push for automatics. So I think this is maybe the first big test Stevenage have had. And I also think we're getting the slightly inflated price because of that struggle, that defeat Huddersfield had at Blackpool last time out, which, as I say, the red card, to my eye, made that much more difficult from them than it could have been and should have been.
Interesting. Well, I think I might move on to my third pick, which comes into League Two, and I've gone for interesting angle, I think, which is the half-time, full-time market. I've gone for Grimsby Town to win at Accrington Stanley tomorrow, but I think that they're going to get the winner in the second half. And the reason that I say this is there's a very strong feeling at Grimsby that whereas last season they lost a lot of games because they won a lot and they lost a lot because when they were losing or they didn't really have the depth, the strength of the bench to make substitutions and freshen things up without a drop in quality. And so they struggled to maybe change games that weren't quite going their way. Whereas I think this year they've got more depth that can give them that extra edge in the latter stages of games. I think we saw that on Tuesday night where the substitutions really helped them, even not partly recruitment, but also somebody like Cam Gardner, who has come through the academy after they poached him from Scunthorpe at 16. And he looks like a very strong runner with great movement. And I think they've recruited really well as well. Jade Cabia looks like a real threat to me. Had a fantastic start to the season. And they've still got players to come back as well. So From my point of view, I think Grimsby and the strength of their bench is going to win out. I would maybe anticipate Accrington Stanley to be quite tight and maybe make it difficult for them to carve them open in the first half. And maybe Grimsby's strength in depth could come to the fore, whereas Accrington Stanley have a much weaker bench and they kind of need everyone to stay fit. So that's my thinking. I think Grimsby's superior bench is going to help them win this game in the second half. And you can get a big price if you fancy that angle at 9-2 with Betfred.
Yeah, interesting one. On Accrington, Gab, worried for them early? Or obviously the points tally doesn't look good, but they have played a game less, it should be said, than most. But yeah, what early conclusions on them?
Yeah, I think with Accrington Stanley, they've obviously added to their squad recently. They've signed Jay Boris on loan from Burnley, which I think was a really helpful addition. And I think if they had signed him before I did my 1-24s, it's one where that could have moved the needle for me. Similarly with Paddy Madden. So far, they've drawn with Gillingham, lost at Crewe, and then lost at Salford. So I suppose if you wanted to make a case for Accrington Stanley, you would argue that they have played all three of their opponents are currently in the top 7, so it shows that they've played some tough sides and they've actually excelled in the League Cup as well. So it's not all bad for Accrington Stanley, but I still worry a little bit about whether they've got enough quality in that squad and enough players who are kind of Football League standard. And I think there's going to be a few games where they're a bit short. And I think after last season's struggle, where they only survived on the penultimate weekend, I think it's going to be a difficult season for them.
Yeah, it's a tough league to get relegated out of League Two, but when you have these teams that hover around it for a long time, the trapdoor does sometimes.
You're speaking from experience there, Matt.
Well, we didn't hover around it; we plummeted through it at whirlwind speed. Unfortunately, like there's I don't know, when you think of League Two, there's 4 or 5 teams, aren't there, that are always there or thereabouts in them relegation places, and Accrington certainly would be one of them in recent years, but we shall see. In League Two, I'll just give a little bit of a caveat before I do my pick. I really like Chesterfield as well to beat Harrogate this weekend. I think they'll got a really good chance of bouncing back from their midweek defeat at Gillingham, which was not really in line with everything we've seen from them beforehand. And I think against Harrogate, who've made a good start, but you're getting a generous price there, 5-6. However, I put up Chesterfield last week. I wanted to try and mix it up a little bit in League Two this week. So I've gone for something as equally tried and tested, in my opinion. Michael Cheek, you can set your watch to this man. Top goal scorer in League Two on his first season in the EFL last season. And he did it at a canter in the end, winning by 5 or 6 clear of his nearest rival. And while Bromley are kind of solid mid-table, nothing spectacular about them, they do have probably the most reliable forward in the division, in that the team is built around him. He takes plenty of shots and he's very, very reliable goal scorer. He's had 13 shots in his 4 games so far, Michael Cheek. No one in League Two has had more than that. And he's converted it into a couple of goals as well, one coming from the penalty spot. So having an anytime goal scorer who's also on penalties is always a nice added bonus. Whenever he gets up towards this kind of price, bordering on 2-1 to score anytime, my interest is always peaked. And it is particularly so this weekend because as much as I like Notts County, I do feel they're a team that give you a chance. They've conceded 7 in their 5 games. They're still looking for a first clean sheet in the league. I love the way they play and attack with vigour and create an awful lot of chances. Got some great players in wide areas. We all know about Jatta through the middle. Obviously lost McGoldrick in the summer, who was a maverick for them last season. Look what he's doing at a higher level. I mean, he was a joke really in League Two last season. But I do still have these concerns about them just giving up chances. And I think you're going to be giving up chances to probably the best finisher in the division here. So 15-8 for me, it's too big. It's too big against a defence that gives up goals on a man who is a proven goal scorer, has the track record from last season, started this season well. He's taking more shots than anyone else. What's not to like here?
Yeah, he's 92 to be the top goal scorer, Matt.
I'm on at 16, Gab.
Oh, well done, you. Nice.
Thank you.
I mean, I've got mixed feelings about that because on the one hand, like you say, the team's built around him, and he's given a lot of freedom that he maybe wouldn't be if he got a move to, a bigger team like a Chesterfield or someone, a promotion, a prime promotion candidate. But on the other hand, I don't feel like Bromley are a team that's going to create tons of chances, so you are relying somewhat on his sort of shooting ability. But he did bag the top honours last season and has started this season really well. And I agree with you about
the penalties help a lot, Gab. I think it's
Yeah.
really when you're a good penalty taker as well, like that's worth 5 or 6 goals a season, and in a top goal scorer market, that's a massive swing. We're probably looking at what anyone that gets towards 20 is going to be placed in the top 4, and you're probably going to need 23, 24 to win it. So I just look for players that I'm confident are going to get 1 in 2 that are on penalties, and it's very rare you see them outside of the top 5 or 6. So yeah, not necessarily expecting him to go on and win the Golden Boot again this season, but I was looking down the list and I just thought he's rock solid, isn't he? He really is.
Yeah, certainly is. Well, I think it's about time then, Matt, to look at our selections in the overview. We'll start with yours. You've gone with Casey Palmer over 1.5 shots against Blackburn, Huddersfield to beat Stevenage, and Michael Cheek to score anytime against Notts County. Which of those would you take as your favourite? Would it be the Casey Palmer one because of the 11 to 10 where you might
it would. It's absolutely pivotal. You get the price on that one though, because it is a lot shorter elsewhere. And I don't want to say a rick, but it is really. I mean, it's just way too big, and I think it probably will get cut if enough people get on. But I'm on, so do what you want. Huddersfield to beat Stevenage. Yeah, I've said I'm a little bit of trepidation there, but I think odds against, like for all the reasons we said, like you made a very good sort of summarizing statement of my feelings that if this was the first game of the season, Huddersfield would be, massive odds
4
on
to 11.
Yeah, they would. And unfortunately for them, there's now some reservation, but I actually think that they're in pretty good nick, and this is Stevenage's toughest test, so we shall see on that one. I'm in mixed minds, but I think at the price you have to play it. And yeah, Michael Cheek, rock solid. Yeah, Palmer would be my nap, but I always like Michael Cheek in and around 2 to 1 as well. So the treble pays 10.5 to 1 at Live Score. Bet it would be a nice week to get my first 3 out of 3 full house up this season. Gab, let's take a look at yours then, and we'll give them a bit of a scrutinising. You've gone for Birmingham to win to 0 against Oxford. Home comforts for Gab there. Cardiff double chance at 3 to 4 as they go to Luton with William Hill. And you've gone an interesting angle with the draw half-time, Grimsby full-time against Accrington at 9 to 2. Gab, I know you really like that Grimsby angle, but I think in terms of like just a really solid wage, I think Birmingham to win to 0 stands out to me.
Yeah, I'm very confident in chances. I don't see Oxford creating an awful lot, so I think I would probably edge towards that one as my nap for this weekend's action.
Okay, well, Gab's treble pays just over 20 to 1 with Bet365. He did land his treble on week 2 this season. Can he do it again? Time will tell. Gab, it's been an absolute pleasure having your company for the last half hour or so. I hope you enjoyed the EFL Betting Show. If you haven't already, please do head over to oddsnow.com. We recently redesigned our website. We have all manner of sports news and sports betting tips to arm yourselves with ahead of the action. And head over to the Odds Now YouTube channel as well, where we've got plenty going on as well over there, including this show, which is retrospectively uploaded to there for anyone who didn't catch it live. So all that remains for me to say is good luck with your betting this week. Gab, thanks very much for your company, mate. Enjoy your trip to Northampton. It's Wealdstone versus Carlisle in the National League for me. I've got to fit my weekly Carlisle reference in, even though we're not in the EFL anymore, haven't I? But yeah, we'll be back next week. Gab, see you then.
See you then, guys.